Number 8. Kursk nuclear submarine disaster. While carrying out training exercises in the Barents Sea in 2000, Captain Gennady Petrovich Lyachin ordered the crew of the nuclear submarine he was commanding to fire 2 torpedoes. It was the first major Russian naval exercise in over a decade, and unfortunately, it would also turn out to be one of the deadliest. The submarine, known as the Kursk, had a reputation for being unsinkable, but it proved otherwise that day when the training exercise went terrifyingly wrong. A hydrogen peroxide leak caused a massive fire in the torpedo room, resulting in 2 large explosions, and the Kursk sank to the bottom of the sea. The Russian government initially reported that all 118 crew members died before the submarine sank to its watery grave. But a note found in the pocket of Lieutenant Dmitry Kolesnikov's uniform explained that 23 men had survived the 2 explosions. They stayed alive for several hours but were completely helpless while they waited for rescue that never came. In the meantime, the sailors searched for more oxygen, causing another fire in the process. The flames consumed what was left of the oxygen, and sadly, all 23 surviving crew members died. In the aftermath of the tragedy, the Russian Navy was heavily criticized not only for lying about there being no initial survivors, but for not doing enough to rescue them. It was also made clear that the military was obviously ill-prepared for a nuclear submarine disaster. Number 7. One of the best snipers of all time. Simo Häyhä grew up on a family farm in southern Finland near the Russian border. At the age of 17, he joined a voluntary militia called the Finnish White Guard. He then went on to serve in the Finnish army, where he proved to be an expert marksman. Häyhä trained as a sniper starting in 1938. The following year, the Winter War broke out between Finland and the Soviet Union. He remained largely out of sight while he quietly killed hundreds of enemy soldiers over a 98-day span, averaging around 5 kills per day amid frigid sub-zero temperatures and limited daylight hours. Häyhä achieved his highest daily kill count of 25 on December 2, 1939. In his journal, which was found in 2017, he estimated his total kills at around 500. According to various military records, he killed somewhere between 438 and 518 people. Some historians are skeptical of these numbers, but there's also no evidence to suggest that Häyhä deliberately exaggerated. And it's generally agreed upon that he was responsible for at least 200 kills. Häyhä was humble about his accomplishments and never spoke of his wartime activities. But the Finnish press used him as a propaganda tool starting pretty early on in the war, crafting a hero narrative around a man who was just doing his job and happened to be exceptionally good at it. Number 6. Desmond DOSS. As a devout Seventh-day Adventist, Desmond DOSS was a conscientious objector, which means that he refused to participate in certain aspects of military service due to his religion. While training as a combat medic during World War II, he refused to carry a weapon or to kill an enemy soldier. His superiors ridiculed and abused him for his beliefs and even tried to get DOSS kicked out of the military. But he nevertheless went on to serve and was awarded for his exceptional service. In 1944, he received 2 Bronze Star medals with a V device for exceptional valor while serving in Guam and the Philippines. During the Battle of Okinawa, DOSS saved the lives of somewhere between 50 and 100 soldiers in an area known as Hacksaw Ridge. In 1945, he became the first conscientious objector to receive the Medal of Honor. DOSS displayed true heroism by continuing to treat other soldiers while suffering from injuries himself. He spent 5 years recovering after the war and lost a long battle with tuberculosis. Because he was unable to work full-time, DOSS devoted much of his life to his church. He lived at the age of 87, passing away in 2006 after being hospitalized for breathing difficulties. Have you ever heard of Desmond DOSS? If this story is the first time you've heard his name and his story sounds interesting to you, you should check out the movie Hacksaw Ridge. It's about his incredible story. Have you seen it before? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 5. The First Navy SEAL. Lieutenant J.G. Jack Hendrick Taylor was originally an orthodontist who practiced in Hollywood, California. But like many other brave men and women, he was inspired to make a drastic career change after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, and enlisted in the U.S. Navy. As an experienced yachtsman, Taylor was originally slated to teach seafaring skills to new soldiers, but he ended up being assigned to an anti-submarine warfare vessel called a submarine chaser. Then in 1942, Taylor was recruited as a member of the Office of Strategic Services, a newly established military intelligence agency. He joined the organization's maritime unit, which is often thought of as a precursor to the Navy SEALs. Throughout the rest of his military service, Taylor underwent ocean operations in Greece, land operations in Albania, and a parachute drop into Austria. He commanded dangerous missions delivering spies, weapons, explosives, and other supplies to Allied forces in enemy-occupied territory. At one point, Taylor was captured and sent to Mauthausen, a notorious concentration camp with a reputation for its cruelty and deplorable conditions. He was one of the only American prisoners there, and he gathered intelligence during his stay while witnessing countless brutal executions of his fellow inmates. Taylor himself was scheduled for execution twice, but managed to narrowly escape death both times. He became informally known to many as the first Navy SEAL for the various types of service he performed throughout the war, and was also one of few Americans who could speak firsthand about the atrocities they witnessed at Nazi-run concentration camps. Number 4. The man who served under 3 flags. In 1954, a man in his mid-30s who called himself Larry Thorne enlisted as a private in the U.S. Army. His real name was Larry Torney, and he had already been a soldier for nearly his entire adult life. He first enlisted as a soldier for the Finnish Army in 1938 at 19 years old. Torney was a natural leader and soon found himself in charge of a unit that pursued its enemies on skis. In 1942, he skied into a mine and was severely injured, but was soon back to work. His service against the Soviets during World War II would later earn him a distinguished military award called the Mannerheim Cross. After Finland and the Soviet Union agreed to a ceasefire in 1944, Torney joined the German SS. British forces arrested him at the end of the war for being a Nazi officer and threw him into a POW camp. He escaped and fled to Finland, where he was arrested yet again. Torney was released in 1948 after serving just part of his sentence. He was one of several hundred Eastern Europeans who joined the U.S. military under a law that granted foreigners citizenship in exchange for 5 years of service. But Torney was still being pursued for his war crimes, so he changed his name to Larry Thorne to avoid having his real identity found out. He did extremely well as an American soldier, teaching new recruits about guerrilla warfare and survival skills, and eventually became a captain in the Special Forces. Thorne died in the Vietnam War in 1965 after losing control of a helicopter he was flying during a storm. He received 5 Purple Hearts and the Bronze Star Medal for his heroic acts. Number 3. The prisoner who entered Auschwitz voluntarily. Witold Pilecki was a captain in the Polish army. During the early stages of World War II, he did the unthinkable and voluntarily became a prisoner at Auschwitz as part of a mission to expose the horrors that went on there. Pilecki had heard things about atrocities being committed at the concentration camp, but the Nazis were secretive about what happened behind the gates, so nobody knew for sure if the rumors were true. In 1940, at the age of 39, Pilecki immersed himself into a group of around 2,000 Poles as they were being rounded up for relocation to Auschwitz. Immediately upon arriving, he realized that it was no ordinary prison. He witnessed brutal executions that were carried out in plain sight while performing grueling labor, wheelbarrowing rocks around. It's believed that the rocks may have been used for building the camp's gas chambers or crematorium. In the meantime, Pilecki realized that the prisoners were only being given enough food to survive for roughly 6 weeks. Anyone who lived longer than that must have stolen food, according to a guard, and the punishment for stealing was execution. During his time at Auschwitz, Pilecki organized a Polish resistance among the prisoners, which coordinated with a resistance effort on the outside. They coordinated to look after each other's food rations and to get correspondence out of the prison and to Pilecki's commanding officer. By 1942, the clandestine organization consisted of around 500 members. Pilecki hoped that his reports would compel the resistance to try rescuing the prisoners at Auschwitz. Sadly, they thought he was exaggerating about the conditions there, leaving Pilecki and his comrades to fend for themselves. After enduring the hellish reality of the concentration camp for nearly 3 years, he snuck away under the cover of night while a guard wasn't paying attention. Most prisoners survived no longer than 42 days at Auschwitz. Pilecki spent 947 days there enduring indescribable abuse, malnutrition, and exhausting labor. When he reached the resistance on the outside, he learned that his commanding officer had been replaced. The new man in charge had no interest in taking Auschwitz down from the inside, and it seemed as if Pilecki had suffered for no reason. He continued to serve in the Polish military and ended up in another German prison camp, but not voluntarily this time around. Thankfully, the U.S. military liberated the camp in 1945, and Pilecki was rescued. But he met a tragic end a few years later when the Soviets accused him of betraying state intelligence and executed him. Pilecki's written account of the unspeakable acts he witnessed at Auschwitz was published as a book called The Auschwitz Volunteer: Beyond Bravery. Sadly, the importance of his work went largely unnoticed until years after his death, when the damage was done and it was much too late to put an end to the crimes against humanity that the Nazis committed at cruel concentration camps. It's a sobering example of truth to be found in the saying that hindsight is 20/20. Number 2. The toughest man alive. David Goggins was born in 1975. He grew up in Buffalo, New York, where he experienced his fair share of challenges starting at a young age, including racism. At just 6 years old, he started working at his family's skating rink. Goggins was accepted into United States Air Force pararescue training after failing the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery test twice. He struggled with the program's swimming requirements and was ultimately let go after testing positive for a genetic condition called sickle cell trait. But Goggins didn't let this or any of his other challenges stop him from becoming one of the toughest warriors of all time. He returned to the Air Force, completed Tactical Air Control Party training, and worked the position from 1994 until he left the military in 1999. After his service ended, Goggins struggled with depression and obesity, reaching nearly 300 pounds. But a documentary about the most difficult part of Navy SEAL training, known as Hell Week, proved to be life-changing. It inspired Goggins to join the Navy despite being much older than the average recruit, and it took him several tries to convince a recruiter just to give him a chance. He successfully completed Hell Week in 2001, suffering from pneumonia and stress fractures along the way. Goggins served in Iraq as part of SEAL Team 5. Then in 2004, he graduated from Army Ranger School. He received the Top Honorman Award and is the only member of the American Armed Forces to complete TACP training, SEAL training, and Ranger School. The Unstoppable Soldier is also an accomplished endurance athlete. He's completed over 60 marathons and triathlons, many of which involved running over 100 miles, regularly placing among the top 5. Goggins even finished the Badwater 35, a 135-mile mountainous run in the extreme heat that many consider to be the most challenging race on Earth. And he holds a 2013 Guinness World Record for completing 4,030 pull-ups in 17 hours. Number 1. Diprasad Pun. Sergeant Diprasad Pun is a member of the Royal Gurkha Rifles, an elite British Army rifle regiment that recruits Nepalese soldiers. These warriors are known for their exceptional bravery and skill. While on sentry duty outside his unit's compound in Afghanistan one night in September 2010, Sergeant Pun discovered a pair of insurgents trying to lay an IED, improvised explosive device, in a nearby road. He quickly realized that he was surrounded by Taliban fighters armed with AK-47s and RPGs, rocket-propelled grenades. They launched a well-planned assault on the post. Pun fought back against the attackers using every weapon available to him. He shot his machine gun until it ran out of ammo, then tossed 17 hand grenades and a landmine at the enemy before resorting to his SA-80 service rifle. At one point, a Taliban fighter climbed onto the roof of a nearby building and rushed toward Pun, whose weapon misfired. The quick-thinking soldier took the tripod that was used for holding his machine gun and threw it at his adversary's face, knocking him off the building. Pun continued to fight alone, leaving as many as 30 Taliban soldiers dead by the time reinforcements arrived. He received the Conspicuous Gallantry Cross from Queen Elizabeth II for his courageous and vigilant actions. At the ceremony, he said he had no choice but to fight, and that he thought he was going to die, so his goal was to kill as many Taliban soldiers as possible before they killed him. Thanks so much for watching. If you'd like to hear some more fascinating military stories, let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time for another amazing video right here on American Eye.